Einen wunderschönen guten Abend und herzlich willkommen hier zu einem Live-Filmgespräch bei DOK.fest at Home. Wir sind hier im Silbersaal des Deutschen Theaters. Ich bin Christina Wolf und bei mir ist meine Co-Moderatorin Katharina Arendt und die wird sich um Sie kümmern, um Ihre Fragen. Wenn Sie Fragen haben zu diesem Film, an den Protagonisten, an den Regisseur oder auch generell, dann bitte posten und wir geben diese Fragen weiter und zwar an den Regisseur von 7 Years of Lukas Graham, René Sascha Johannsen. It's a pleasure to have you here with us. Hi, René.
Hi, thanks so much for having us.
And it's very, very lovely that you brought along your protagonist, who is, of course, Lukas Forchhammer. Hi, Lukas, nice to meet you.
Hi, as René just said, thank you for taking some time to talk to us.
Well, thank you very much. First of all, of course, we would like to know how this whole thing came to life, because I know, René, that you've been in the music video business for many years. Why did you pick the band Lukas Graham and Lukas as the leader of the band for a feature-length documentary film?
I didn't just do music videos, also did a lot of music documentary before that. So, and I think basically pretty much since I started, I've been looking for the right character, the right storyline to fold out in the longer format. And I started up a lot of stuff. Some became a TV series, some became shorter form. Sometimes you just hit a dead end. It doesn't go as you hope or as planned. The thing about Lukas was, first of all, I saw the obvious talent. Not just him, but the whole band was really good, I thought. And as many other people discovered them, it was through the early YouTube videos that they put online. And that's, both of them are from Lukas's home in Christiania. So it tells a little bit about him as a character as well. It looked like something interesting. Obvious talent, good setting, good music. So I contacted them and long story short, things just took off. I mean, there's a few more details to that, but basically things just went pretty much crazy from the beginning on. And they were at that time, they were pretty much nowhere. Like you had just started up and I found them really early on. So I was hoping they were going to go somewhere, but I obviously had no idea how big it was going to be or how many goals there was going to be set and actually conquered. And so, I was in for a pretty crazy ride.
And Lukas, on your way to success, I know that because I've worked with a lot of young bands, and there's always people, and the more success you have, the more people join in and they want to be a part of it. How did you know that René was the right guy to make that film about you? Because I think there were many people who would like to make a documentary about Lukas Graham.
I guess I've always kept the amount of people around me to the minimum. And I mean, when René started filming, it was because we were doing our first showcases in New York and Los Angeles in 2013. And I mean, we have a phrase like the team is the team, and the team has been very small always and still is. And René did some of the first music videos to one of my favorite rap bands, Suspect. So when I heard René was going to start filming us, I was pretty pleased to hear that.
And I mean, of course, it's not a coincidence that the film is called 7 Years of Lukas Graham. You have a beautiful song called 7 Years. Is that a coincidence, or did you stop at 7 years because you knew that would be the perfect title, or how did you know, René, that now we have enough footage, now I can make this film?
It was a little bit of a coincidence, but of course, the closer we got to 7 years, it would make sense to actually be filming for 7 years. But I would say for a long amount of time, like you always look for obstacles, like how does your character, you need some obstacles for the character to kind of go through some stuff to get to somewhere else than where you started out. And the thing about Lukas was that things just went crazy from the beginning on. Like every goal he set, they kept being higher goals all the time, and everything happened. Like a lot of music documentaries are about just a band getting signed or having I don't know, like but these goals, like this happened within pretty much the first 2 weeks I was filming. He was signed by Warner. Well, that was almost a deal set. So, and then 7 years happened. He was Grammy nominated, like, and all these things happened within I think like 3 or 4 years. So and we also had, like, the chemistry was good, and I started making some music videos for Lukas, and we did like a commercial format. So I wasn't really in a rush because things were going fine.
And were you living in the States at that moment, René?
Yeah, I was living in first New York, and that's actually one of the reasons why we started in the first place, that Lukas played the first showcase in New York City, so they came there, and I jumped on board. But then, later on, I started, as things picked up speed, I was following along everywhere. But basically, I wasn't really in a rush because it was always new and interesting things were happening. And then I think about 5 years in, we started contacting. I got a Danish producer on, Sarah Stockman, who's an amazing Danish producer. And we started trying to get funding from the Danish Film Institute. And that took about a few years as well. And alongside with that, I was still filming. We went to Korea and, with Lukas, and I was basically starting to look for the right ending. And that took a while as well. Because a lot of the film up until then had been very focused on more, you can say, physical obstacles, or like things happening in real life, where I think later on I was looking more on the inside of Lukas and digging more into maybe more psychological, and you can say, like, how to wrap up his, like, feelings or his mental journey.
And Lukas, you are experienced with the camera since very, very early age, because you were a child actor. How did you find yourself being the protagonist of a documentary? It needs a lot of trust. It's not a polished documentary. It doesn't look like a promo for Lucas Graham. I think we get to know you pretty well in that film. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about that. How did you feel in front of a documentary camera?
I know that the record label wanted to pay for finishing the documentary, and I was very much against that, because I didn't want anyone who had an interest in me looking better than I am. I think it's also a very Danish, Scandinavian trait to, like, have this solidly planted feet on the ground. It's like, I am what I am, and I can't ever run away from that. One of the things I did was, first of all, me and René became friends over the years, so it's easier to have like a friendly photographer filming you than someone you regard as being the enemy. And I mean, most people behind the camera is the enemy for a guy like me, just like most journalists is. It's like, and then you can say, I never interfered. I never asked René to edit anything out of the documentary. When at the times he showed me viewings and asked me, is there something you don't like? And I said yes. He said, what is it? I say, I don't want to tell you. It's René's film. I'm just the guy being filmed.
How do you like the film, the finished film?
I liked watching it with other people in the cinema. When I watched it by myself, I thought I was an asshole. And then when I watched it with other people, I was pleasantly surprised about people, like the laughing, especially. Like, I noticed people like crying in the cinema at moments that I got emotional. I noticed people laughing at moments that I thought were maybe a little more tense. And then just seeing people's reactions to the film made me understand my own humanity a little bit more, to become a little existentialist. I started seeing myself from a better light, like that I'm maybe not an asshole, but I'm a person on a mission with a huge drive, and like I described myself to René several times like a big steam locomotive knocking down walls. And you can't help but lose some of your empathy towards your environment when you're busy knocking down walls all the time. And imagine I'm always the spear point of my team. Everyone around me can only work as hard as I do. So I have to be like 10 steps ahead of everyone in terms of intensity in my workflow.
Let's talk about intimacy. because I think, as I've said, we get to know you, Lukas. We share some very private moments. We see you showering with your daughter, for example. Those are very private scenes, but still, I think it's a very respectful documentary, and it's, I don't know how to say that. It's polite, seems not the right word, but do you know what I mean? I think we're not intruding. Is that the right word for that? Maybe you can tell us. I'd like to know from both of you, actually.
Like René, you have what, 300 hours of film? Like it's not the only shower scene. No. It's not the only scene of me with Viola like changing a diaper or playing in the bus.
I definitely had to cut out the private parts.
No, it's like the point is you have so many scenes that are very intimate and very private that you can choose the ones that make it more tasteful. It's like, it's not an attempt of saying, oh, here's the superstar with his daughter in the shower. It's more like René was up in the hotel room. I believe it's in Las Vegas that shower scene is taken from. And we had a super busy day and we had a rough night. So like mom, Rillo, was super tired. So I was like, I'll take the baby to the shower. And René just kind of, as he normally does, follows me around with the goddamn camera. And like, it's like, and then, I don't know how to explain it, but it's like when you have so much footage, you can always choose the footage that makes it look like it's normal what's happening, you know?
Yeah.
But I also think, like, asking about intimacy, I think, first of all, it's the best footage we have is definitely whenever I had more than just one day. Like sometimes in LA, I would go to the house for just one day and not that much stuff would happen because I think basically Lukas was, you thought like you were more aware of the fact that I was there. But every time we kind of went on tour, like we were in a bus for 5-10 days or whatever, or we had 3 or 4 days in Korea, or we had the first 2 weeks together, or the month in the studio. It was a long time. Then you kind of just you drop the guards and get used to the camera, and all of a sudden, you know, it's just a more fluent and normal everyday life kind of feeling. I don't think you get more, like, less aware of the camera, and I think that means a lot. So that gives me, but it's also, of course, a huge commitment from you, and it takes a lot of trust, and when I get that trust from you, I take it very serious. It's not, you know, something I take for granted, and if I slip, it's not just you, but me as a director. Like, it would make me look bad if I didn't treat my main character right. And I think that's the beauty of, that's my goal anyway, like with this film, of course, and the other stuff that I do. Like, you can sometimes show less maybe beautiful sides of people. Like, it's still all human sides, but it's like human emotions, but as long as you make sure that if you show these sides, you also have to show why people act like that or why people do. And if you, I think that in that sense, you will end up with a character that wins way more than if you only show the nice sides, because everybody knows nobody's like that in real life. Like, we're all human, we all have anger and like all the full spectrum in us. So I think the goal with this was to show the full spectrum, like to see you as a human being. And as long as I make sure I show why you act in certain ways when you do what you do, and people understand why you get angry by the Grammys, for instance, or then I think then we're good. I mean, then you end up as a fuller perspective and a fuller portrait and a more honest side.
I think we have already a lot of questions.
Yes,
so Kati, tell us.
There were already some questions rolling in, and we were talking about privacy and your friendship. And people ask to both of you, so the question goes to both of you, what was the biggest challenge for you, René, and for you, Lukas, during the shooting, during this period of time?
You want to start?
I mean, I think it's probably a bigger challenge for René all the time to tap into this like hypercharged jet plane just moving. It's like every time René jumped back on the train, we had moved so damn far. Wouldn't you say, René? It's like
No, I
so
would
much
actually.
was happening.
Yeah, I think honestly, and I don't know if we actually 2-on-2 have talked about this before, but it was definitely harder to film with you in the beginning because I think you've done so much press and you've been so much in front of a camera during your life, but not in the way that I was doing things. So I think it was hard for you to let the guards fall and just trust me and let me do what I was doing. It felt like you had to perform for a while. And as you said before, the guy with the camera is usually the enemy. I think that probably, I mean, you can tell your view on that, but I think coming from where you do, press is not always, like you never know what the press wants from you. And when you grow up in Christiania, it's always, there's a lot of cameras around and you never know where they're gonna go and what they're gonna tell. So I kind of definitely felt like you had an opinionated idea of who I was in the beginning, and it took a while to get behind that and for you for you to kind of know that or understand what I was doing and how it was different. But I mean, we definitely got there, but it took a while. So I think that was the most challenging part for me.
Any more questions?
Yes. So there's one that fits quite well into that. One person, she or he asked that if it was difficult for you, Lukas, to show these private moments, and if you can reflect a little bit more on that topic.
I wouldn't say it was difficult to show these private moments. I would view honesty kind of like a sword and a shield. Like if I don't have to lie about myself, I don't have to remember what I say. Everyone has seen the movie. Everyone has seen how I get angry when I don't win things. Everyone has seen the way I react in certain under pressure situations. Everyone has seen how lovingly soft I get with my daughter, or how much I can get upset when I'm on the phone with my wife and I can't make her happy by coming home the day she'd like me to because I have a fucking job. It's like I don't have to lie ever. It's all there in the movie. It's all in my songs. I've written it all down, you know. So I would say it's easy to be as honest as I am.
And I would also get into that, like the shower scene is the least of it, and there's actually also the pool scene later on in the film with your daughter as well. And it was almost more like I had to look where I was pointing the camera sometimes because I was getting more than I needed, you know. So Lukas is definitely not afraid to show physically, like show any sides of him. So like I think it's that definitely was no problem. It was almost more me like trying to. So blufærdig, I don't know, how do you say blufærdig in English? Lukas, do you know? No,
I
have forgotten the word, but I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
Well, that's
You're afraid of other people's naked bodies.
Something I was wondering about is, Lukas, doing the film, it's obvious how you're sometimes longing for more privacy, right? When you have, people following you, and you can see that this is, of course, very, it's stressful for a person. Did that ever collide with René's film? When you said, okay, I need more space for myself.
I would say René almost became... No, René kind of became the confidant. Like the camera, his camera became where I could sit down and just talk about my frustration, like in some sort of therapeutic way. Only a few times when I was on the phone with my dear Mrs., I told him to switch off the camera, which he never really did, I guess.
A little bit.
Why are your band members not featured as much as you, Lukas, or René? Maybe you can tell us, because I was wondering about that.
Yeah, that was a choice I had to make at some point in the editing. Like during the, I was actually filming the band almost as much as Lukas all the way through, and we did a shorter commercial format of some of the footage in the beginning where the band is just as much there, I think, but we just, I have to tell you that the editing process took almost a year, It took a long time to like find the right way through this footage. Like I had a lot of ideas of how, like what I wanted to do, and we did a few test screenings, and for people who doesn't know about the band, it was obvious that you were just more committed to the scenes that were more centered around Lukass and his feelings and how he went through this whole circus, and less on the band as a whole. And I guess like you kind of just have to make a choice like about your characters, of how much space they can take up. And if you want to, you can only, there's a lot of choices behind this.
Of course,
but basically I think like you felt the journey more through Lukass than anybody else. And I think actually, if you watch the movie again, you will see that the band members actually, I think they do play a big role. Like but it's more on a secondary level. Like they're not talking to the camera or to me as much, but still, a lot of things are reflected through them because they experience everything very different from how Lukass experiences things. He's definitely the spear, as you said before. Like he's the one you follow, and his stakes are high all the time. But also, like for instance, the band wasn't in the studio, so you don't go through the same like journey with them as you have Lukass like following every scene all the way through all the time. So it was some, on a personal level, I would have loved to see the band more in there, but there was just a lot of conversations and choices with the editor throughout and we just had to make some choices at some point.
A lot of band members changed.
Oh, that too, yeah.
And a lot of band members changed from 13 to 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we went through. You guys went through a few
lineup changes.
Yeah. So I would have basically have loved for the band to take up more space, but it was for the sake of the movie. You can say the movie. It made more sense in the end to have Lukass be the bigger character.
Are there? I mean, there's so many great music documentaries out there, and I think this is one of the greatest ones I've seen in the last years. I'm not kidding. I think it's so well done, and I was wondering, what are the legendary music documentaries you, I'm sure, have watched and had in the back of your mind? Maybe first René and then Lukass.
I really like Talahina Sky, which is about what are they called? Kings of Leon.
Yes.
I think that's great. Like you really, because it's also not just like a polished piece, but you get behind the scenes and actually, and you go. I mean, that I think that's really beautifully done. There's also. There's the Bob Dylan one, which is very much where he goes to London. I can't remember what it is.
I don't know the name. Yeah.
No, I can't remember. It's Still Here or something. That's really good. It's all shot on black and white 16, and they follow him through, like going through London. I think in the late 70s or something. That's really interesting. And that's one of the few very true cinema verite films, which is a super hard thing to do on Super 16 black and white camera. So it's maybe more from an artistic perspective, but it's also very honest, and I think you see a lot of cool sides on Bob Dylan. And I think the one I've watched the most times, because it's super entertaining, is there's one about Red Hot Chili Peppers, the making of Blood Sugar Sex Magic in the studio with Rick Rubin, I believe. I'm a huge fan of especially John Frusciante, the guitar player from Red Hot Chili Peppers, and there's just some amazing scenes from this house where they just go crazy, probably on drugs, and I don't know, they don't see it, but you get a sense that they're not fully there all the time. It's very, again, like beautifully shot, also black and white for some reason, but that's that's really nice too, I think. So maybe my top 3. Actually, also the Madonna one. A tour video from the mid-90s, I think. I can't. Because it's got a lot of pure scenes as well. I think her husband did the one. I can't remember. Was it Guy Ritchie at that point? Or I can't remember. But that's really good too.
And Lukas, what are the music documentaries you know and appreciate, and you can put your own in the same shelf now?
Did he just disappear? Or is it just me? I can't see.
I think we lost Lukas probably.
I didn't want to answer that.
He didn't want to. It was a mean question. So I think we can just hang around and wait for Lukas to come back, and we can talk about technical stuff, René, if you don't mind, because
sure.
I was honestly so impressed by the sound mix of the film. I think it's immaculately, perfectly done, and I know it's very hard if you use. You have live music. You have music from the record. Can you tell me about who did that? Who's this good at his job or her job? Yes.
Yeah.
And
we
what
were
was the
super
concept?
lucky that I think the sound engineer, Lucas's sound engineers, Frank, this guy and another guy, they've all the way through. They've been recording. I think maybe all his concerts from. And he's been using the same sound guys from the beginning, I think, as much as I know. So when we actually started putting like the live scenes together, we could just tap into his library of I don't know how many terabytes of music, which was truly amazing that he had all these live concerts.
Back.
Here we go.
I think Lukas is back.
Yeah, so that was amazing that we had that. So that's for the live sound. Then there's Jacques. There's two main sound guys on my team outside of Lucas's team who's been recording all the stuff. But on the post side of things, there's this the guy who did the score is called Jeno, a Danish guy who lives in LA. We went back and forth, me and the editor, a lot of times with the soundtrack. Or the score, and he's just like this guy is just incredible. He can play any instrument in the world. He's been playing jazz music in New York for a long time, and he's been doing scores for Lars von Trier and a movie about Ai Weiwei and all that. Like he can go on forever. Like he doesn't care. Like if you go. The first is a bit like, maybe it's not fully there yet, maybe you should try something else. And he's like, yeah, and he gives you 3 other. And so we went through many tests and ended up with something. He was actually also nominated for the Danish Oscars, you can say, for the score. And he just put it out on Spotify, that's another thing. And then there's the sound mixer, Jacques, who's also, I think for me personally, and throughout the whole year of post sound I was doing, I had the most fun the week I spent with Jacques in the studio doing because there's so much stuff you won't even know, like Foley stuff we did, and and he's just his mix and how he cleaned up everything, and I mean, my sound, like for instance, just to give an example, the scene from the Grammys is shot on my phone, and to get proper sound out of that, you have to be a little bit of a genius, I guess. So to put that out in the cinema and actually make it sound okay, that was one of my concerns when we watched it in the Danish cinema in November, and it sounded great, and all respect to this guy for that. So I've had an amazing team, like on the whole. Throughout the post-production that has done incredible work, and it's been a lot of fun. So I've been sitting through all of it, so it's not that I just gave it to somebody, but that process has just been super fun, I think, to get into that. And of course, when you deal with musicians and a lot of sound nerds, you have to pay respect to that as well and make sure you do a proper job, I believe.
Since you while you were gone, Lukas, we've been talking about the sound mix of the film, and because I find it so impressive, and I think it's so well done. The music, and also, I mean, as just René talked about, the talking, everything is perfect to me, the sound. And of course, that's very important for a music documentary, I guess. You wouldn't be very happy as a musician, Lukas, if you had a music documentary about yourself with shitty sound. So that's what we were talking about.
Oh, no, definitely.
And we're happy that you're back.
Yeah, I'm happy that I'm back. I mean, now it's about the time where the kids are asleep and people are turning on their Netflix because they don't have any options to go anywhere. So we just found an alternate solution for Wi-Fi.
Well, thank you for coming back. What is the, since you just talked about that, like the pandemic, of course, and people don't have anywhere to go, how do you deal with it? I mean, I've read some of your social media posts about not being able to play live, and in the film we see how much playing live means to you, and how, I mean, I've seen you play live and you're an amazing live band, so how do you deal with that, not being able to perform?
My second daughter, it just turned 1 here in April, so being able to be at home for the whole first year was kind of cool. And last summer was the first time in a decade I was at home for a whole summer, which was kind of nice. I was in Denmark for a whole summer with no jobs to do. And then now the second summer, it's beginning to irk me a little bit. I have a philosophy of attempting to never really complain, not even to myself. I mean, I live a really, really nice life. I have wonderful children. I have a great family. And I mean, complaining isn't going to change this situation, is it now?
Mm-hmm. And we were talking about...
Normally I do 100 shows a year at least.
Yeah. Are you worried about getting on stage again? And because you haven't done it in a while? Because I know by myself that I get a little bit worried about normal social stuff, that when it comes back, oh God, I'm going to be so awkward when I'm in a room with all of a sudden 20 people. I haven't done that in ages now. Do you think about that?
I mean, I went on stage yesterday and played like 6 songs at the release party, and I was like, me and a lot of the people I work with a lot were a little surprised. It's like, whoa, this is how good we actually sound live. That's how far away performing was. But I believe that my true persona is on stage, that it's when I'm talking with people like you or walking around on the street, I'm wearing the mask, and then when I'm on stage, I'm a more real version of me. It's kind of where I live the most, the fullest. So yeah, whenever I go back, it's like riding a bike, you don't forget it.
Mm. Which side of you do we see in the film, if you talk about those two versions of yourself?
I think you see the more real parts of me on stage. And then, I mean, of course, I'm very real with my kids. And then in like backstage moments like the Grammys, you see a more like a persona of some sorts, because you have the record label people around. And I mean, I don't think I'll ever really get comfortable around like industry people, record label people. It's like being in a room full of lawyers. You don't know who's there to help you and who's there to rob you. And I mean, I have some of the best in the business, like Jamie Rosenberg that I insulted at the Grammys is still my publicist, and she's amazing. Yes. Kate Craig is still my A&R, and I love her to death. But it's like there's just something sketchy about the industry. I mean, and I think it is like that for every real artist producing works of art. That as soon as someone wants to capitalize on your creativity, it becomes sort of an issue, you know.
Mm. I've been reading many articles right now about celebrity, you know, about the concept of celebrity, that this is changing now in the pandemic. And people focus more on the arts and the music and the film, but they don't focus, you know, as an audience, we don't focus on the celebrity part of it. So can you find something positive about that? That now, you know, all the buzz and all the sketchy parts that you just talked about, Lukas, they're gone right now because we only have the music, we only have the films, etc., and we don't have, you know, all the bubble around it.
I'm an old-fashioned songwriter in the sense that I write songs and I perform them because I can't not write songs and I can't not perform them. And then you have a more modern version that wants to be famous and wants to be seen. And you can see it in the pandemic. Some performers start doing TV shows and sketches and weird, just to get back in people's like brains. And I'm very comfortable just riding my bike around Copenhagen with my kids, going to the studios Mondays and Thursdays, writing songs. We just released a new song yesterday.
Yes.
And it was super nice to release it without having to travel all over the place. Like normally we have to go to like a bunch of radio stations all over the world and TV stations. And right now it's like everything's being recorded from Copenhagen. It kind of suits me well. I mean, I never wanted to be famous. I just like to write songs and I really like performing them too. It's like...
Yeah, it's a vicious circle, I guess. You're in that situation.
It's the evil spiral.
But let's get out of the evil spiral and ask our mostly non-evil audience members if they have any questions for you.
I love mostly.
Do we have any questions?
Indeed, they do. We were talking about you as the famous person, but how do you reflect on yourself as a father figure? Especially because your father is an important or was an important or still is an important person for you. How is that for you? You're constantly torn between like being on tour and actually wanting to be at home. How is that for you?
I mean, it's a hard question to answer now that I've actually been at home since the 10th of February 2020. I can feel that my family miss me. And I mean, my dear girlfriend does her best to encourage me, but she's not 40,000 people yelling my lyrics back at me. So yeah, I think it's the which of the lesser evils. Like, I mean, I kind of need both. I need to travel to be and miss my family, and I also need my family to miss traveling. And for the most part of my life as a parent, I brought my family all over the place. I mean, from Viola, my oldest daughter, was 5 weeks till she was 7 months. She visited 35 cities in America, and she visited like 12 European capitals. I mean, she learned to roll and crawl in Düsseldorf in 2017. It's like she learned we were walking around when she was 2.5, like in Munich and in Frankfurt and Hamburg, and like we used to go to Berlin every Christmas, like for like a weekend with some friends, and like go to get like currywursts with her. It's like there's all this stuff that we just do, and like other families are like, oh my God, we have to travel with the kids, and I'm like, shit, I have to stay at home with the kids. Like traveling with the kids is so easy because there's less toys. Like you have with you what you have with you, right? I don't know if I'm answering the question correctly or not.
Yeah. And another question, well, we were talking about the past now. How did the film help you to reflect on these very important 7 years for you?
Yeah, and imagine someone had filmed 7 years of your life, the 7 most important years of your life until now, and you could actually look at it. I kind of found that pretty intriguing, that I can show my kids one day, like, and be like, hey, this is us. Like, it's pretty cool to be able to look at myself in this way, to see my growth and my deterioration. It's nice to see what parts of my dad I took with me as a father. Like, for example, when I'm at home, it's me more often that brings the kids to the shower, just like my dad did. Like I'm a very present father, and I do a lot of stuff with my children because I like to. And yeah, it's nice to see which parts of him I took with me, and some of the more not nice parts of him I left behind, you know, kind of as you have to as a father. And that's regardless if your parents are dead or alive. Like you have to kind of sort out what they did right and what they did wrong.
And was because I know that René's father also passed away at a young age. Did that connect you?
No, that's
No,
another.
I read that. It's not
No,
true?
my brother.
I'm sorry. But did that mutual experience of loss of a family member, did that connect you? Would you say that?
I mean, René, you brought it up at a point when you kind of felt that there was still this wall of like distrust between us.
Yeah,
and you brought it up and brought me into your story.
I don't know, I felt like at some point that I was asking Lukas about so much stuff from his life, And I thought at some point it kind of made sense to kind of like tell him a little bit about where I was from, what my story was, what I've been through, and how maybe I could relate to some of the problems he was dealing with and whatever. So yeah, at some point because a lot of the time you guys were so busy and I was basically just following along, and we didn't really have much time to sit down and have just a man-to-man talk or whatever. So you didn't get much of who I was. So yeah, I just kind of felt at some point it made sense to share and let him know how I was reflecting on stuff he was talking about from who I am and what I've been through and stuff. So.
And it seemed kind of fated that when we were then filming in Korea and your grandfather passed, whom you were very close with, it was like you and me sitting together at a bar when you found out that he'd passed, and then we kind of took that conversation together too, just off camera.
Yeah, that was actually a super nice night. We went out and had a long night together, having a Korean barbecue at 3:00 in the morning, and you had a interview I think at 9 next day or something.
What you don't do for grieving friends, huh?
Yeah, that was nice. But I got the sense that you liked it too.
I had a very good night.
Yeah.
What I was wondering about was something that you've talked about before. In this Q&A, Lukas, you talked about the camera being your enemy and those people asking you questions being enemies, and you expect people, not to treat you well. And as I'm a journalist, of course, I'm very interested in that. And I was just thinking about that while you were talking just a second ago. Is that because people ask you questions that are actually much too intimate and you don't know anything about them, and you just sit down for an interview and then they ask you about, I don't know, your father?
No,
or something,
we have to go further back in time. We have to go back in time to my upbringing in Christiania, which is a squatted municipality in Copenhagen. It's like 34 acres of military base that was squatted. And growing up, we had to always defend ourselves because people would ask questions about where we were from. And then suddenly I get old enough to watch the news and read the newspapers. And maybe there's been a riot and I read the story in the newspaper and it's all wrong. You read about how someone from my neighborhood started burning cars, but we saw the police beat up harmless people who had done nothing in the middle of our neighborhood. So we started throwing stones at the police and burnt their cars. So my entire life, I just met this wall of the regular society, the normal world, telling the story they want to tell and not telling the story as it is. And I became a political spokesperson for my neighborhood when I was 16. So I went through political press training. So I didn't go through press training like normal artists. I went through political press training, be on the news and answer questions from politicians press training. So I'm just a little more aware of the potential dagger, which is there present constantly all the time, because any journalist is looking for the clickbait. Any journalist is looking for the opening, for that unique story that might be a great story for a journalist and ruin the life of the person being interviewed. Which is why I decided to just be so brutally honest I could from the beginning, because the more honest, the less can fuck on me, right?
Mm-hmm. So I think we have a lot more questions. So I was just, that was a personal interest for defending my colleagues. Sorry. But we have more questions.
Yeah, so during the talk with you, it seemed that you're a very, very brave person, that you're really emotional. And one question is asking, or in the chat there popped up the question, how are you managing your strong emotions, these strong emotions that you experience after shows or events?
The only way out of an emotion is through that emotion, so it's about being present and talking about it. I think awareness is the key word here. Yeah.
I see.
A workout can help a lot. Just do push-ups until it stops being there.
So you just take your time being there and just experience everything that there is, that you feel at the moment, after the shows. And
I mean, now I've been sober and clean off drugs for 7 months plus. But yeah, back in the day, I would just hammer it away, just drug it out, which is not a proper way to deal with it, by the way.
But a very common one.
It's a very common one. I mean, if you look at my business, I think it's like 60 to 70% that is like public about their self-medication with like cannabis or other drugs or like alcohol. And I think we kind of need to talk about this issue of self-medication because it really is just goes on through the entire Western world, which is, and the reason why I say Western world is it's because it's the culture I know the best. It's as if we're not allowed to be human and feel things, so we have to numb it out, right?
Do you feel like this is getting better? Because I feel like I haven't talked to musicians about mental health. Like 5 years ago, nobody talked about it, and I feel like now it's getting better. It's improving. People are talking about it. There's so much more acceptance for it.
I think there's also like more pressure on artists because they have to be present all the time, and there's pictures of them everywhere. So we have more suicides and we have more drug-related overdoses, or drug-related deaths. Like it's just very, and I mean a lot more like pharmaceutical drugs are being consumed now by artists as well. Like let's do drugs that make our hearts slow down and then do drugs to make our hearts pump faster. Luckily, I never done any of them. But
I was about to say, I think you guys went through a period on the bus where everybody went into a health camp, and it was...
Yeah, we've done that a few times just to kind of check ourselves, because I mean, it's so easy to just get off stage and there's beer and wine and booze, and like if I ask someone backstage like to get me some weed, it'll magically appear. And I mean, at some point you just have to make a decision to not do it.
René, concerning that question, were there like points for you where you wanted to tell Lukas stop or don't do that, or where you wanted to really interfere in his actions?
No, I think these guys, I was looking for more rock and roll actually. I would say like the whole, while you guys went so much into working out and talking about what to eat and where at what time and when and like all these things, documentary wise it's honestly pretty boring. I mean, you could make a whole subject out of that. I wasn't really looking for that. I was considering at some point, could we make some kind of thing out of this? I chose no. So no, definitely not. I think Lukas is very healthy in a lot of ways, mentally also. So no, I didn't have to be the grown-up at any point, I don't think.
I wish there had been more cooking, because I feel like, Lukas, you're a pretty good cook.
Yes.
I wish there were more recipes in the film, because I don't need more rock and roll. I wanted to see more Lukas recipes.
We should do a cooking show.
Yeah, the traveling. I mean, we had a propane gas grill on the road in the US and did a lot of barbecues and stuff. But yeah, I miss. That's kind of what I miss the most when I travel is cooking. Besides my kids, of course. But like the activity of cooking is super meditative for me, I think.
Yeah, the timing was tough for you guys, food-wise. Like there wasn't much time to actually get the barbecue out and whatever. Like because we were always traveling between shows. Mm-hmm. So I think that the timing was hard, cooking-wise.
Have you improved your cooking skills during the pandemic? Because I feel like at least here in Germany, all my friends, they've started fermenting and baking.
Yeah, no, we ferment a lot up north and did a couple of good kimchi recipes.
I'm glad that we talked about that. So I just wanted to know. Do we have any more questions that are about kimchi or anything else?
Yes, not quite kimchi, but something else. What do you two expect for the next 7 years? Because one person is saying that the audience expects a second part of the movie. So,
I mean, it's a question that sucks in many ways. It's just because that I really don't plan. I'm not a planner, and it kills my wife every day. Like, why can't we plan anything? I live my life. I'm one of those livers. I like to live. I like to write songs. I do what I do. I am where I am, and I mean, yeah. If René wants to follow me along for another 7 years, he's more than welcome to. I do believe, though, that he has plenty of other stuff he'd like to do than have more in-depth conversations with me about kimchi or my dead father.
I think we touched upon that
a couple of times.
Yeah.
René, to ask the question a bit broader, what are your next projects then? Sorry.
I'm working on a lot of smaller things right now, just little money projects, and I have to live as well. A year in post is not. It's a long time. We're way above budget, so I hope a lot of people are gonna watch this movie around the world. So now I'm basically out, doing a lot of smaller things. But I'm on a bigger scale. I'm hoping to do some fiction where I don't have to wait 7 years for the right ending. But actually, maybe like get into more control stuff. I've been writing on a few TV series, and definitely I have a few fiction ideas. Documentary-wise, I've been working on a few different things too. I just moved back. I've been living in the US for 8 years, and I was following this homeless guy in LA that he's had a few viral hits as a. He's like he's a kind of a singer, but also like a human beatbox. Like I think he called it I can't remember, but it's a certain like you kind of sing and rhyme and hit your chest and like you do all these almost stomping kind of things while he's singing. He's called Red, and if you look up Red, the Man Without the Machine, I think they call it. He's had a few like viral hits as a homeless guy, and he just doesn't get why he's not getting like he wants to be big and make it, but he's also involved with a lot of drugs and in and out of prisons and not doing too well on his mental side. He's getting older and he's hard to work with. But he's got a pretty interesting story, and I have a lot of footage with him, but it was super hard to follow him because he kept like not like being off the grid, you know. He's either had no phone or all this stuff. But that's something I'm gonna try and finish, but it's one of those, you know, it's pretty hard to finish. Also because now I'm here and I haven't been able to travel to the States because of COVID and this and that. So as always, there's a lot of things taking shape and maybe getting out of shape. So you never know as a documentary filmmaker.
Another, more technical question, I suppose, that just rolled in was, how do you keep track of 7 years of film footage? Like, I imagine that's a lot of files on your computer. It's really weird with your like how your memory works. I guess it's the same as a singer. You can remember all these lyrics. I never got like, how the hell can you remember lyrics for, I don't know how many songs you have, Lukas. You probably have like 500 songs in your head and you can sit down and sing them. My memory works like that as well with footage. Like every time the editor was looking for something, I knew exactly where it was, from what city and what date or whatever. And that's super weird. But for some reason, I sometimes I write a little bit of, like when we were on tour or whatever, I would write down notes for what was happening when. But that was especially conversations with if there was little kind of paths I was following in with what was happening. Hello, that's my neighbor. Mainly it's all in my head for some weird reason. I've been working a lot as an editor myself too, and I think that helps. I remember when I started editing 20 years ago, it made me insane because you go home after a 10-hour editing day and you will have all these ideas in your head that you feel like you have to keep thinking about because else they'll go away, and you kind of work into a routine with that and get used to having a full movie or scenes or longer paths in your head. So I don't know, it's kind of a skill, I guess you perfect throughout work. And I think the important part is to be able to tap out of it as well, and tap in when you need it, because else it would go crazy.
And Lukas, you just talked about that you played a little show yesterday in front of some people and you celebrated the release. What are your plans for the upcoming months?
The Danish festival summer was just shut down, and we had some big shows planned that are being moved and rescheduled. And I mean, I think I've decided to just look forward to next year and write a hell of a lot of songs and finish a lot of music. I've booked a lot of studio days in. I mean, I have my own studio close to home, and then there are some more advanced studios, like with more gear and abilities to record strings and drums and brass and stuff. So I think we're just gonna get into the studio mode and finish as much music as possible, because it was one of the things that, like, everything shut down, and then I could see that some of my colleagues, that their careers were built around live performances, and some had to sell their houses or like really rearrange their finances, where my music is being listened to so broad spectred, like so broadly in the whole world, and I have so many songs still on radio in so many different parts of the world, that nobody in my company has actually been fired. Everyone, all the musicians and everyone still gets their salaries and stuff. So it's like, maybe we really just focus on releasing music, and once we can get back on the road, be sure we will.
And we hope to have you here in Munich with us. And I have one thing left to say, and we've already talked about that in the stream before we actually had the audience members join, that you've just mentioned it, Lukas, that your music is played all over the world. Billions of people know your music. One person who doesn't know your music is my boyfriend, and he watched the film with me, and he was so impressed, and he said, I shall say hi to both of you, and it's a huge compliment watching a music documentary about a musician you didn't know before, and he was intrigued, and he loves you now, and he loves, so that's a big compliment, I guess, for you, Lukas, for your music and for your voice. He was very impressed by your singing, and René, of course, to you. You've made a wonderful film about someone my boyfriend didn't know, and now he loves you.
That's one of the most important compliments for me, because the whole goal all the way through was, this is not a fan portrait. I wanted to make a movie that you can also watch if you're not like the biggest Lukas Graham fan in the world, because I think the goal was to make a very human film about what like somebody like Lukas in that position goes through. And how you have to, like, how you're dealing with stuff like that. So it's a huge compliment for me too, that not fans can watch it and actually enjoy it. So,
yeah, that's really nice to know.
And he will come to your next show, he said.
Oh, great.
He wants to see you live. And I think we have some last question or questions, maybe one or two.
Yeah, there's a nice last question. Oh, well, actually it came in as the first one, but I thought it was pretty nice to ask it at the end. And the question is, did you two ever sing together? Did you maybe make a song together? Is there something?
I think, René, you're a musician too, right? You've played music, or you do play music.
Yeah, but as a drummer, you don't want me to sing.
No, I can do the singing, and René can do the growling, and we'll make like we'll make a rock and roll band.
Okay. So we can't wait to hear you both perform, and thank you so very much for bringing 7 years of Lukas Graham to DOK.fest München. Thanks for talking to us. René, thank you, Lukas. Take care, and hopefully see you soon on a stage in Germany.
Well, as we talked about, we'll all say Servus.
Servus Lukas, Servus René, und ich sage jetzt auch Servus zu Ihnen und möchte Sie natürlich noch daran erinnern, dass auch dieser Film zum Abstimmen bereit ist für den Kino-Publikumspreis. Sie können den Publikumspreis bestimmen, das geht auch noch viele Tage bis zum 23. Und dieser Preis ist gestiftet vom Bayerischen Rundfunk und von Dreisat, also stimmen Sie ab für 7 Years of Lukas Graham. Und ich sage jetzt Tschüss, Dankeschön Kathi und Tschüss, schönen Abend.
Thank you guys, thanks for having us.